Hi everyone. I'm going to tell you about a group research project that I would like you to do, and we'll be working in this mode partly for the rest of the semester. Your last project will be a research paper. It will be very short and focused research, but you'll collectively work together to do a broader range of research relevant to both our novel, Ceremony, and the question of the Anthropocene as we bring these two things together so that we can think about this novel, written in the 1970s, before people were really talking about the Anthropocene. We can think about interpreting this novel in light of, or within the framework of, the Anthropocene. So, what you'll be doing is working in one group with three other students. There's one group of two, just because of the way the numbers work out. After 2 weeks, we'll mix things up, so most of you will be working with a new group of peers to keep things fresh and to help expose you to different dimensions of possible research into the question of how we can think about this novel in the context of the Anthropocene. In the end, you'll use some of the research that you and your peers do, and you can all share sources that you find. This is collective, as the basis of writing a short research-driven essay. Not a full research paper, but a short research-driven essay. I'll talk more about what I mean by that distinction later. So, how this will work? Well, I just laid it out. Here on this sheet that I'm sharing with you are the basics. And this tells you everything you need to know, everything I just reviewed pretty much. I'm expecting you all to coordinate this amongst yourselves. I will be checking in with you and, of course, giving you feedback and ultimately evaluating your group performance and your individual performance within each group. But a lot of it will be up to you. So we have two classes, 145 and 315, and each class has its own group. Later, if you want to, you can also share research and tips and information across these groups. We can think of everybody together, but right now we're dividing it in terms of each class, okay? So in other words, we've got a group of 3 here for the 145 class, a group of 3 here, right? And each of these groups will be doing a little research into a particular aspect of the Anthropocene, or going a little bit more deeply into the world of ceremony by learning more about the Laguna Pueblo people, and that will lead to thinking about the other peoples who live in that area. We'll be thinking about the Navajo, maybe about the Kiowa and the Paiute, maybe some other people who are part of that area in what we today call the United States and what we today call New Mexico. But up until just a few hundred years ago, was quite a very different place. Okay, so that's the basic layout. As you can see, there are 4 categories of research. The Great Acceleration, and here we're not talking about one of the early Great Accelerations that different texts we've read have proposed. We're talking about the primary Great Acceleration starting in the mid-20th century after World War II. We just read an essay, or you should have read a paper, rather, by Mark Maslin and Simon Lewis called Defining the Anthropocene, in which they discuss the Orbis spike hypothesis, which has to do with the arrival of European explorers and then soldiers and settlers and colonists and so forth in the so-called New World, and this collision of the new and the old world, which is sometimes also called the Columbian Exchange. So this is a big part of this novel too, right? Or one way we can think about the novel, as you'll see. So that's another area of research. This one is quite different in a way, learning about Pueblo peoples and cultures. Now, and I'd like to share this research topic around a little bit because I think it'll be a relief from all of the Anthropocene stuff in a way. It's a very different kind of research, but at the same time it overlaps. If we're talking about the Columbian Exchange, we're talking about the colonization of the Americas, we're recognizing that these Pueblo peoples were like the other peoples of what we now call the Americas subjected to European colonization. And that's a big part of how we're going to think about the question of the Anthropocene in the context of this novel. The last bit, it's related to the Orbis spike, but it's so distinct and important that it's its own category, and that is what Lewis and Maslin, in defining the Anthropocene, call the bomb spike. But we can think about it more broadly as the advent of the atomic age, the testing of nuclear weapons, and the use twice of nuclear weapons in 1945, and what it means for human beings to have developed this astonishingly powerful technology of knowing how to release the power locked up an atom. All right. And as you'll see too, of course, this is a big part of Anthropocene and also of ceremony. So we'll be thinking about how all of these things connect. Now, each of you have your own tab. We're going to share this same spreadsheet, and it's fine if you kind of look at what others are up to. I'm again thinking of this as a collective endeavor. You'll all contribute and learn from one another. So each of you have your own tab. If you can't find yours, you might have to scroll over. So for instance, the 145 blue group here has their own tab, right? Just as the 315 green group does, right? And there you'll find, you might have to move things around a little. You'll find information, which I think can help you organize. Okay, there we go. So that's what I wanted to see. So for instance here, Jyoti, Yueja, Charlie, you're all in this group, and you'd be researching the Orbis spike and the Columbian exchange, right? And here are instructions for what you need to do. Everybody has a variation on this. You're doing the same basic tasks with slightly different keyword searches, and that will lead you, of course, to different sources. So here you can see I started you out with some obvious keywords. You'll come up with more, and as you begin to do this research, you'll probably find keywords that will drive further research. I'd like you to list those. I'd like you to look for ceremony connections, and you can just write those over here, right? And these can just be the form of notes. You can do more than 3, but the idea would be, as you begin to think about the Anthropocene, the Orbis spike more specifically, the Columbian exchange, and so forth, you start to look in ceremony for stuff that is relevant to that. Things that you could say, well, this has to do, in a way, with the Columbian exchange, with the colonization of the Americas, with the introduction of new, perhaps, plants and animals, right? Or the exchange of plants and animals, right? Or technologies, etc. Related ceremony keywords. One idea is that as you develop this and you think about the connection to the novel, you might start to find some connections to ceremony, and you might recognize in the novel there might be some keywords that you can pull out of the novel that might also help you develop a more sophisticated search moving forward. I'll leave you to start figuring that out, and if you're having trouble, try to give you feedback. And as you go then and develop your keywords, start doing searches, and I'm asking you to use the Credo database as a primary means of doing background information. So this takes you into encyclopedia entries. It's a good way to get a broad overview of a subject, the kind of thing you might normally find on Wikipedia, but from more authoritative and stable sources. Another place we'll be exploring, and we'll do more work with this. This is important if you continue to do research in your courses moving forward. More sophisticated research using the articles and databases section. And for now, you can just use EBSCO, but note that there's also a JSTOR. There are other ways to search. Oh my goodness. Well, that sounds dangerous. We won't do that, right? And that things are broken down by subject. Now, for now, I just recommend sticking to EBSCO and starting to do some keyword searches in here. Moving forward, we'll talk a little bit about search terms, keyword methods, Boolean searches, how you can limit and expand the range of your searches to be more effective. But for now, let's just play around with these databases and see what you come up with. The other one, of course, would be just I think Google is probably the premier search engine, and it might lead you to something called Google Research, which has a similar function to an academic database. See what you can find. And, you know, for now, we're not going to worry too much about evaluating these sources intensively. We'll talk more about that later. Let's just begin with seeing what you come up with. And when you find a promising source, you can do more than 3, but do at least 3. You know, begin to track that source, including a URL or other way to find it, the name of the source, and you know, keep in mind you might have the title of an article, but you also want the title of the journal in which the article appears. You want to know what kind of source it is, and you know, of course, who the author or authors are. And we'll refine that moving forward, so that you're working in a more appropriate and sophisticated way with academic sources. That's it for now. I'm sharing this with you. Please go ahead and work with it collectively. You know, be careful not to interfere with anybody else's tab. That would not be cool. You don't want to accidentally delete someone's work. But I trust that you can pull that off. Like I say, you know, do feel free to refer to other people's research, but I would note, you know, and this is a bit of a race, whoever gets there first, right? If the 145 green group does their research before the 315 green group, and they find a set of sources, and, you know, green group, 315 green group, you have the same 3 sources, that'll be a bit of a problem. Try to add to what is being discovered rather than just duplicating it. So you can check one another. If you're the first to a source, it's yours. If the other group has already found it, you know, you can make note that you also found it, but then try to take it further and find something else, all right? So that's it. What is the timeline, you ask? Well, I'll tell you. I'd like you to work on this in small groups before Thursday, right? And we'll work on this in class a little bit on Thursday too. I'd like you to at least have begun organizing your group, determining how you're going to share your tasks. And you might, you know, for instance, say, okay, well, I'll do, you know, one person will do Credo, one person will do NYU databases or something like that. You know, you might say, oh, each of us should come up with a couple of keywords and then discuss which ones we want to use. You can have a Zoom meeting. You can, you know, do this with a WeChat. You can do it via email. I really don't care how you share and collaborate. Figure that one out yourself. And you'll be doing this for a couple of weeks. So get started now. Today, I use class time. And if you're in the North American Blue group, which now is just Andy, Sam, and Santiago, you know, figure out how to do that this week. I need to talk to you guys anyway because we're a little bit behind on our meetings. And, you know, that Blue group is now smaller as we welcome Grant back, as we welcome Lily back to Shanghai. We have a few other people too. Heidi and Rin are coming back from elsewhere. So we've got people coming back to Shanghai. Welcome, everyone. We'll continue to work with you wherever you may be. And of course, don't forget that I have this cute dog.